Imagine a brighter future. A future where global warming, consuming, and destroying our species and the planet as a whole isn't as prevalent. A future where we are all healthier, mind and body. And a future where we show our fellow human beings and fellow earthlings the same love and compassion as our pets. What if I told you all of these things could happen if we just changed our diets? You probably wouldn't believe me at first, but after doing a lot of research, I'm prepared to tell you exactly how this could be in all of our futures if we simply just change our views on animal products and shift our diets. First, we will talk about the health benefits of cutting out animal products. Second, we will discuss the environmental benefits. Thirdly, we will go over the many flaws in the animal agriculture sector itself. And then finally, we will discuss how you could change the way that you eat. To start off with the health benefits, what's hard for many Americans to understand is that there's a link between their health and their diet, and that is not something that can always be seen immediately. In America, the prevalence of obesity in adults is nearly 43%. In 2015, nearly 632,000 people had died from heart disease, making it the leading cause of death. Something to note is that 3/4 of the American population don't eat enough vegetables or fruit. In a study done in Germany on plant-based diets, the results showed lower disease rates like cancer and cardiovascular diseases. In the same review, it's thought that limiting the amount of certain amino acids found in animals can potentially lead to a longer life. The review concluded that through studies, there is substantial evidence that plant-based diets are associated with better health. In another study done in Italy, it was concluded that the study showed a significant reduction of body mass, total cholesterol, and glucose levels in comparison to those not having a plant-based diet. And the same diet also reported a significant protective effect from ischemic heart disease and incidence from total cancer. Nearly 70% of the world is intolerant to lactose. Although this varies by ethnicity, this intolerance activates the immune system, causing inflammation throughout the body, in the lungs, tissues, throat, digestive tract, and can even cause acne. In a study published in Cambridge University in 2019, it was found that in conventional cow milk, it was likely that 26 to 60% of those sold tested positive for pesticides and antibiotics, some exceeding federal limits for amoxicillin in one, and others contained exceeding levels of sulfamethazine, finding the presence of synthetic growth hormones as well. All of these issues could be avoided by switching to plant-based alternatives. The easy alternative to cow milk is plant-based milk, which has actually become more popular over the years. Some of these types of plant-based milks include almond milk, coconut milk, and oat milk, which all can easily be substituted for cow's milk and will not activate lactose allergies. A big plus is that most plant-based food doesn't have any harmful fats and it has no cholesterol. Now on to the environmental benefits. You'd be surprised how many people already know all of the benefits that going plant-based provides. But the major reason why it's so hard to change is because most of us feel powerless on our own. What's me buying a steak when I'm out at dinner going to do to the environment? It's almost the same situation of donating money to someone that nobody else is donating to. Well, what's my $10 going to do for their fundraiser for $1,000? Well, if you donate, you might inspire somebody else to donate, who will then inspire somebody else to donate, and before you know it, that $1,000 is met. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations itself identified animal agriculture as a major threat to the environment, finding that the animal agriculture emits 18%, nearly 1/5 of all human-induced greenhouse gas emissions. That's more than the transportation sector. This was back in 2006, and because problems like these do not resolve themselves, it's likely to assume that the problem has gotten worse. According to Paul Appleby in the book Global Guide to Animal Production, about 60 billion birds and animals are slaughtered for food in the world each year. Roughly 9 animals for every man, woman, and child on the planet. He also begs the question, that if, as estimated, by the end of the 21st century, our population is to exceed 9 billion, can we actually afford the leisure of feeding 1/3 of our harvested grain to farm animals? As Appleby puts it, should we continue to cut down tropical rainforests for cattle ranching, plunder the world's oceans, and destroy the habitats of free-living animals merely to satisfy a craving for animal food? It's only a fact that animal agriculture on such a global scale will not be supported for much longer. If there is no change in our ways, at some point we will deplete the Earth's resources solely because, as many would put it, it tastes good. Or as others may put it, it's too hard to change my diet. If we could eradicate the animal agriculture sector, for the most part at least, we would stop these high emissions and slow climate change. We would also stop a lot of deforestation. Instead of 1/3 of our grain going to this sector, we could eat it ourselves. And we could focus more on fixing world hunger rather than fattening up animals. Now, onto the evil that exists in the animal agriculture sector. It is a gruesome sight. In fact, if you watch a video on it, you're likely to see a warning beforehand. Where else in any sector, or anything really, is a warning needed just to show videos or photos of something that is so prevalent and so popular, especially something that we're supposed to consume? We can look at crops, coal, fossil fuels, basically anything else, and we wouldn't feel sick to our stomach afterwards. So why is this something that we can overlook? Over the recent decades, conditions for animals has become more restricted, and it has ultimately become devoid of environmental stimuli in living space. These landless facilities produce more manure than is in demand, and because of this, animal feces are distributed to small local land masses. These landless facilities produce more manure than is in demand. Because of this, animal feces are distributed to small local land masses, resulting in pollution to local environments. A study done by the University of Windsor on the psychological effects on slaughterhouse workers showed that this type of work had destroyed many workers and ex-workers' mental states, if not all of their mental states. Amy Fitzgerald, a criminology professor in this university, found a strong correlation between the presence of large slaughterhouses and a high crime rate, with disproportionate increases in violent and sexual crimes. In essence, providing evidence that these workers had become desensitized, traumatized, and violent. The work done in slaughterhouses should not be glanced over, because while you might be chewing down on a nice steak or pork chop or even drinking milk, oblivious to the reality behind that good, somebody else had to go through the mental toll of killing and abusing that animal. Besides that, working in a slaughterhouse or working in meatpacking is one of the most dangerous professions in the US, because this work has to be done with scared and large animals, also followed by repetitive motions done for hours by its workers at their stations. The way that this profession impacts the psychological state of workers is terrifying. Workers develop psychological disorders like perpetration-induced traumatic stress disorder, which is similar to PTSD. Workers that suffer from this trauma, similar to other people who suffer from trauma, turn to substance abuse and suffer from anxiety, depression, and dissociation. A slaughterhouse worker testified after a long shift that he had ideas of slaughtering his fellow workers, and even claimed, "I have no problem pulling the trigger on a person. If you get in my face, I'll blow you away." The ideas behind these studies points to a conclusion that even if a worker started this job without a predisposition to being violent or having a sadistic outlook, that being forced to kill and abuse animals had desensitized them and had triggered further violence, this time aimed at other humans. If you separate your own feelings towards animal agriculture and look at it from a completely different perspective, you might just come to the conclusion that it is a completely inhumane, large-scale practice to mass-produce sentient animals, It's also a complete oxymoron to hold our own pets on a pedestal different from the animals that we eat. Are their lives really ours for the taking and ours to exploit? Pigs are just as smart as dogs, and they're also just as caring, so why can't we be? After going over the health benefits, environmental benefits, and diving into a bit about the dark evil that exists in the animal agriculture sector, we will now finally talk about how you can change the way that you eat. It shouldn't cost more than eating animal products, as you'll be trading out meat for vegetables, eggs for fruit, and cow milk and dairy and fish for legumes, lentils, or plant-based copies of animal products, or whatever else you're into. In this day and age, it could not be easier to switch diets. Because of the internet, all it takes is a quick search online to see what kinds of meals you can make for yourself. You'll feel better about your choices in food as well. There are a lot of alternatives to animal products that replicate the same taste and purpose. There's plant-based cheeses, milks, and meats. In fact, most, if not all, staple foods are plant-based, like beans, grains, pasta, bread, and rice. A small tip with baking is you can easily replace cow milk and eggs with applesauce, which is a cheaper alternative. And believe it or not, we don't need to eat meat to survive. In fact, we're surrounded by a multitude of alternative options that have even better nutrients and better world outcomes. We don't need to eat animal products to stay healthy, and we definitely don't need to eat them to stay alive. Every day, the human race is evolving and changing for the better. One of the easiest, yet also the most groundbreaking changes that any of us could do to change the future for the better, for our own health, for our own environment, and for our own communities, is to change the foods that we eat. This future is possible, and as a great man once said, be the change that you wish to see in the world.